birthday to her.
All right, so
any game-related stuff?
I don't know. I thought we were still on the. I thought we were still in the pre-show, and then he's starting to point at me.
Oh.
So, as per usual, I am Swiss Guard, and in a Swiss Guard hosted episode, we trip out of the gate. And this is enough to keep going. Episode number 180, the deep dive for February 2021. And there's nowhere to go but up from here. So I am joined by two of my good friends, Tau Master 99. How are you doing, Tau?
I'm doing well, thank you.
And Agas Cleese, who's manning the boards tonight.
Finger on the trigger.
All right, so we actually have a pretty...
a starter pistol you used there? Not a real gun?
You know, do the finger guns. So we got a pretty good show tonight. There's been a lot of news in the last couple of days, especially from Nintendo. This is what got everybody excited. I think we knew that the deep dive was coming for a few days, and we're all just waiting for it to hit before we made our final agenda. And fortunately, both Tau and I are on tonight's show, and Agasicles won't pour too much cold water on our Nintendo news. So, Tau, what happened with the Direct that they revealed yesterday?
Yeah, so this was actually the very first like full, like more than just like 15, 20 minutes or so Direct since 2019. Evidently, I didn't realize that. But yeah, they showed off a ton of stuff actually. I think 30 or more or so titles. No, one thing I was kind of surprised at, there was no like kind of, they do that like montage of like indie titles or even just kind of smaller titles. They didn't do that this time, which I was kind of surprised. Usually they throw that in there. Maybe they're saving that for the E3 or E3 like Direct that they'll do at one point, I'm sure. But I just want to go through a few things here that I found interesting or that I was excited about. We're finally going to get Fall Guys in summer, this summer, and that's actually coming out for, I believe, the Xbox too, and well, I guess it's already on PlayStation, so I'm excited about that. I did want to play that, and I think it was on PC, but I don't really have anything that'll run that, so that was kind of exciting. Another thing that came up that I was kind of interested in was Mario Golf Super Rush, and they kind of showed, obviously you got the regular Mario golfing, just the regular golf segment, but then they have kind of like I don't want to say mini games, but like a multiplayer competitive kind of mode that looked kind of cool. Like everybody kind of just hits, when they can, or I guess just for that hole, or I don't know if it's through the whole series of holes, but you kind of just rush, through everything. And it's kind of like a super speed kind of a course kind of play style, which I thought was kind of interesting. I guess kind of in the vein of like Fall Guys or like other kind of games like that, where it's just kind of quick, we kind of get in there and get it done. So I thought that was kind of cool. Capcom Arcade Stadium, which actually came out that same day as the Direct, which is kind of, I'm trying to think. I thought there was something like this maybe on Xbox at some point on the 360 or maybe even on the One, where it was kind of like a collection of just old arcade games, but these are just all Capcom games. And I believe you can get Ghosts and Goblins right now for free through that. And they'll just like release, I'm assuming they'll just release games as the year goes on, so that's kind of cool. I mean, they had like Street Fighter, which obviously you can get like a billion times over, but that'll be one of the games in there, and just kind of other coin op arcade games that were back in the day. So I thought that was kind of cool too. Stubbs the Zombie, which is coming out March 16th, so pretty soon, and that's coming out, I believe, for everything actually. And I forgot what there was like a subtitle to that one, which I thought was kind of funny, but I can't find it right now, but I thought that was kind of interesting. Sorry, go ahead.
So do you feel like, so that wasn't the only zombie game, excuse me, that we had. We also had Plants vs. Zombies Battle for Neighborville Complete Edition.
Yes.
Here it is. Stubbs the Zombie, Rebel Without a Pulse.
Yeah, there you go.
Just question for the crew. You guys have your fingers on nerd culture. Are zombies overplayed at this point?
Um,
I,
I,
I feel like once a thing comes to Disney, then that means that it's out of the nerd zeitgeist. And now that
I
we
think they
have
had a Disney show too, didn't they?
yeah,
At
now
some
that we
point.
have the zombies, like 2 zombies movies on Disney, I think we're on the downside of that. Zombies are no
Right.
longer cool.
Okay, good. That's because that's my opinion as well. So it's the
Well, I
correct
think
opinion.
But
I
would
think
still
with these two games too, though, that I think these are a little more tongue in cheek. So it's not like
Yeah.
Walking Dead or something like that. So it's a little bit more a little
Yeah.
funny and kind of stuff. So
yes, the Walking Dead is and always will be real life. So
yes,
it's always
exactly.
it's always OP. You can never damp the Walking Dead. So that's like a cut above. That's like zombie Uber. It's
That's
an
right.
exception to the rule.
Was there anything else that really struck you, Tao?
Let's see. We had the Mario items coming to Animal Crossing, which I'm excited about. February 25th, I believe. Actually, I think February 25th they have they drop a big update, and then March 1st, I believe, is the Mario stuff that comes out. If I remember correctly. There's a Square game called Project Triangle Strategy, which that's just a working title.
That one is like my big takeaway too. So if a few Nintendo Directs back, they had Project Octopath Traveler, and it just became Octopath Traveler. So I wouldn't be surprised if the game's called Triangle Strategy when it comes. But it's the same team, and that one, it's like taking Octopath Traveler and like merging it with like Final Fantasy Tactics. So it looks really cool.
Yeah, I thought it was actually cool because I mean, kind of looked similar in style, like graphic wise. So kind of gameplay. I guess like the big thing is I guess the choices you make during the gameplay as they kind of that was probably one of the longer segments I think showing off that game. Just kind of showing it off a little bit. So that's not coming out until next year though, 2022. So we'll have to wait a little while. I think there was a demo though they said coming out.
I think so. I don't remember how soon. It might be available now. It might be soon, but I do know. I think I recall that they did a demo for Octopath Traveler as well, and may have made some tweaks. Was it that? No, it was Bravely. I know they had a demo for Octopath Traveler that you can roll into the final game. It was Bravely Default Fellows that they made changes based off the feedback. But
Actually, I was trying to look at
so the other big things that struck me was like Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword HD is being released, and that's actually one of my least favorite of the 3D Zeldas since Ocarina. They had that god awful sequence where you fight the same like fuzzy giant monster with the big toes, like in like a circular mine going down like every time. Like you have to keep going back and fighting him over and over again. And it just wasn't a good battle system. But some other stuff, Apex Legends coming out. The big one, the other big one in my family was Splatoon 3 announcement. But that is also in 2022. And they did talk a little bit about Breath of the Wild 2, or whatever they're going to call it. I don't think they even have a title yet. But all they said was, we're working on it and we'll show more later. So all the stuff that I was excited about is going to be down the line. And the near term, I mean, they had a good slate of games and announcements, but I don't think there was anything in that was like knock your socks off. It was just solid.
Yeah, and the one thing I guess with this direct was, and they even said this during their Twitter post at least, but this was just for like the first half of the year. So I think they went up to August that a couple of the games for release dates, but so we'll see what happens later on in the year for the second half. And then just two more things: a couple pieces of hardware, not new Switches, but controllers. There was actually, and I think they might have showed this one before, the Monster Hunter World Pro Controller, which actually looks kind of cool. And I think there's a system too that they're releasing for Monster Hunter World, or I'm sorry, not World, Rise. And then along with Skyward Sword, they had the Joy-Cons too, the special Zelda Joy-Cons, which actually look pretty neat too. So I guess the one was supposed to be like the Master Sword, and the other one's kind of like the shield, supposedly. And then the other thing with Skyward Sword is there will be motion controls, but also you can use just regular old joystick buttons and stuff like that. So that's kind of nice that they actually kind of made the controls for just a controller too. Although I think the way they had it, I'm kind of not understanding how that would work, because I guess the right stick is the sword slashes. Like if you do, I know, up, down, left, or right. I don't know if you gotta like hold a button, because I don't know. Otherwise, there's no way to like move the camera around. If that was even an option, I'm assuming it was back on the original game.
Trying to remember how it worked on the Wii.
Because I think it was just motion controls, wasn't it, for Skyward Sword back on the Wii? I never played that. I didn't play that one, so I'm not sure.
Yeah, because I mean, if you I'm pretty sure, because Skyward Sword was not also on the GameCube. So Twilight Princess was Wii and GameCube. So Skyward Sword was 100% Wii. So they went all in with the motion controls. I want to say you held the trigger while you swung, but I could be mistaken.
Okay, maybe they'll do something like that then. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure you could punch with the nunchuck and it would block with the sword, with a shield.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it's awesome now that you'll be able to experience your Joy-Con drift with your Zelda skin on it at the same time. So just out of curiosity, I'm just a little wondering why, Swiss, you felt that I might forgive the rough slang, but might go pee on your Nintendo pity party.
Just, you have, I would say that it's a safe assumption. The statement is safe to say Prime and I are probably the biggest Nintendo fanboys on the podcast, with followed up by DB. DB is a much more like level gamer. Like he seems much more platform agnostic than the rest of us. And you just have a crotchety attitude towards all things Nintendo.
Yeah, and that's certainly a perspective.
All right, well, let me share this with our listeners.
Yeah.
Okay, so in a past life, I worked with a Gasclease. Okay, he was actually like a project manager on a project I was on, and we were in the office on a Saturday doing something because we were having to work extra. And being the good manager that he was, he bought everybody sub sandwiches. And while we were eating our sandwiches, I heard from the lips of Agasicles that he didn't like Zelda Ocarina of Time very much. This was right after I had just talked about how it was my favorite game of all time and was like the be all and end all. And then I started to detect a pattern in his opinions. And there's some biases against Nintendo. He is an honest enough gentleman to acknowledge when they do some stuff right, but bad habits are difficult to break.
Well, like I said, that's a perspective to have. And yeah, I mean, I just don't have that like background or history and therefore nostalgia for Nintendo that's kind of woven into my gamer DNA. This direct for me, directs. I'm a little settled down from my notion of when these Nintendo platforms hit the point in the life cycle where they aren't really feeding me the things that I want. And admittedly, I understand that I am an unusual Nintendo gamer, right? That if you go and look at my software load list, right, you see a ton of like third-party apps on there and not a lot of first-party kind of Nintendo mascot oriented IP, and I'm kind of getting used to the fact, like this Nintendo Direct, wasn't my cup of tea, but then, I totally understand that normally, like the big third-party games that I look for, aren't gonna be a big part of Nintendo Direct. I also feel like at this point in the life cycle, right, until Nintendo announces an actual hardware upgrade SKU, which is likely to it's just as likely to be something we want as it is likely to be something like the weird Nintendo 3DS thing with like the second analog stick or whatever, right? Some weird goofy SKU that is an improvement, but like is something not just a total upgrade. But what I'm getting used to and what I'm seeing in the business cycle, perspective is that these Nintendo Directs are kind of settling into those Apple keynotes that were in those years, like between the launch of the iPhone and when we were waiting for the iPad. And like so many of those Apple keynotes, I was like, I'm waiting for the Apple tablet. I'm waiting for the Apple tablet. I'm waiting for like something different in the iPhone. And we just got like the iPhone 3G and the iPhone 4, and we had multiple keynotes where I was waiting. It was fine, and new hardware was produced. I mean, that new hardware was really for those people who needed to upgrade, not people who wanted to buy something new. And the analog is here in that, a lot of the Nintendo Directs right now are, for and appealing to the people who are like the hardcore Nintendo faithful who are really looking for those first party titles, and not necessarily the first party titles that in my mind have wide like crossover appeal. So I mean, it was what it was.
I think that's fair. And honestly, like these first party titles, what do we have really left to look forward to as a new first party Nintendo experience on the Nintendo Switch? We've already gotten Pokemon Sword and Shield. We've got Mario. We've got Zelda. Donkey Kong, they did a remake of a Wii U game. I think the biggest thing out there that's kind of left that will be new and fresh is Metroid Prime 4. But beyond that, really we only have sequels to look forward to. I think I'm trying to stretch for like what big franchise it is, and then we've been looking forward to a Metroid for a while, and they had the development troubles, and who knows where it stands now in development. But I keep waiting for something like that. When's my Metroid Prime news going to drop? And we haven't received it yet.
Well, this is.
And I know. Sorry, go ahead.
And this is the thing. If you go with like the normal paradigm that in general Nintendo only releases, in general with a few exceptions, right? But in general, you can expect one major release of a major IP per like platform iteration of Nintendo, right? And then some exceptions to that are the ones that were like earlier or at launch you might see two of, right? And that's where we're going to see a second Zelda. And the question that will be interesting here is, their primary console platforms have stuck to kind of the 1980s and 1990s life cycle, where it's like a 4 to 5 year platform life cycle, where we've seen Xbox and PlayStation go to 8, 9, 10 year life cycles. And so that will be curious on how they play the Switch, which is this in between thing where we've seen the handhelds go to these ridiculously long life cycles, but their main platforms stay kind of short. And the question is, where is the Switch, which is this weird hybrid between the two historical platforms? Where is that life cycle going to end? And if it's going to stretch out, then obviously Nintendo has to do something other than that historical paradigm of just one major release per first party IP per platform iteration.
Yeah. What were you going to say?
I was going to say, it's kind of funny. Well, I have another thought now. I've moved on from that one. What I guess, because it's kind of expanded on that, because it's kind of funny you mentioned that, because I was listening to, I think it was NVC, it was IGN Nintendo podcast, an older one, just because I'm a little behind on my podcasts. And they were mentioning how, about the, supposed new Switch Pro, whatever it's going to be called, that might be coming out this year, and then how they, I don't know if it was them talking to Doug Bowser or somebody else, or Dave Bowser, I can't remember what his name is now, his first name. They were talking to him, and how he was saying that, we're not going to have anything out this coming year in 2021. I think that was like the end of the year last year. And, that the Switch is just in its mid-life cycle. I was like, wow, really? I mean, that can't be possible that that would be the mid, we're going to have another, 4 or 5 years of this still. I mean, because we're obviously, got the PS5 and the Xbox, and not that that's really a gauge on anything for Nintendo, because they kind of, beat their own drum. But they also came about and mentioned how in the past, there's supposedly not going to be a 3DS, any kind of iteration of 3DS, and there was technically a new 3DS that was a little bit more powerful. That I think there was only a handful of games though that actually that use that power. But still, there was a new iteration on the system that came out eventually, or well, within that same year that they supposedly said, we're not going to do another 3DS. So I don't know. So you never know, what's going to happen. They could be calling it something totally different. So technically, it's not a Switch Pro. It might be called something totally, off the wall, Switch Me or something like that. So who knows? But yeah, I thought that was kind of funny.
I mean, what I've kind of accepted now is that essentially the Switch Lite is the 3DS. It's kind of the perspective that I'm holding on to right now. And when Bowser, it is Doug Bowser, made that comment, right? Like the 3DS came out in 2011. So, it had, and we just stopped producing it last year.
Yep.
So it had a 9-year life cycle. So, we're at basically the 4-year point, right? If you just accept, March, right? So that kind of tracks that we would expect a life cycle that was longer than the norm, but maybe not quite as much as the 3DS.
Yeah. Well, if they follow that model, there should be a Switch XL and an extra large Switch, since the Lite went a little bit smaller when it came out. So yeah, just 2 more things real quick. Knockout City, which is actually a game that is being developed by the studio that brought out the Mario Kart Live, which I didn't realize at the time, but it's like a dodgeball multiplayer game. So that's kind of interesting. It kind of reminded me of Ninjala a lot, just kind of the colors and the characters, how they kind of looked. So
that's what my kids were. They're like, "Is this Ninjala again?" Like what? That's exactly what they said.
Yeah, they're like wall running and bouncing all over the place. So it looked kind of cool. So I might, hopefully give it a try. And then the other one was Star Wars Hunters, which is we don't really know too much about it other than it's a free to play squad based online multiplayer game. Which I was like, okay, cool. We've got a lot of those, but it's made by Zynga, who's the old mobile, I guess, mobile and kind of Facebook developers.
Made up of like some of the game leads originally from Facebook when Facebook was trying to do their own thing, and then became the culprits of Facebook shovelware.
Yeah. So I just thought that was kind of interesting that they had a game out there. So and that takes place. It actually has a timeline between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens, and that's headed out sometime this year too. So those are probably all the ones I thought were interesting.
The last couple for me, Ninja Gaiden Master Collection, and they announced a Saga Frontier Remastered. And I've never played a Saga Frontier game, so that might be on my radar. But I think we are ready to move on now.
Delta 2 out.
So we'll go from Nintendo news, and it wouldn't be an E2KG deep dive without sales news. So Agascles, can you please share with us the January sales numbers?
Yeah, by all means. So this from an article posted by Brendan Sinclair over on GameIndustry.biz, and I quote, "Americans spent more on games to start 2021 than in any previous January, according to the industry tracking NPD Group. NPD today reported that U.S. consumers combined to spend $4.71 billion on games last month, up 42% year over year." The tail of the tape here, hardware sales up 144% on the backs of new consoles, but also given the strength of the Nintendo Switch during the year of the pandemic. Switch reported as the best-selling console in terms of systems sold. PlayStation 5 took the top spot. So one thing to note in here, we actually got this from another article, but these NPD sales numbers are in terms of revenue, not in terms of total units sold. And so, it's not indicative that, more units of the PS5 were sold given the supply constraints, but that the actual income captured from those sales was greater, which would track with it being a slightly more expensive console for the higher level SKU. Spending on game content was up 36% to 4.17 billion. Yay, microtransactions. The big news here, and we'll go into this a little bit deeper later on, is that Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War held on to the number 1 spot for the month. The biggest mover was Cyberpunk 2077, which had been second the previous month, but given its removal from storefronts, dropped to 18th. Half the games in the December top 10 moved up as Cyberpunk vacated the space. And I think one thing for us to talk through, I don't know that we've unpacked this a lot, but a lot of games delayed their launch in the month of December out of fear of Cyberpunk. It was kind of like the big Avengers blockbuster release of December, where like all the other movies just delayed and moved out of the way of that release weekend. And now we see this huge power vacuum, essentially, in terms of sales numbers that's been left in the swathing wake of Cyberpunk's demise. Market accessories spending was up 73%, and being a person who has bought an extra DualSense controller, finally got a hold of the Pulse headset, and I'm sure Xbox accessories as well are flying off the shelves. Can definitely see where that 73% spending, and in a lot of cases, that's what people bought because they couldn't get a hold of the consoles themselves. So they fell into the trap of the consumer commercial marketing that said, hey, we don't have a PlayStation 5, but you can buy the accessories and wait till you get your console. Yay. So, other things here to note is, you had games that spread across all platforms, right? And that's even wider than normal when you consider that some of these are cross-gen titles. So like Call of Duty and Assassin's Creed Valhalla, as well as Madden NFL 21, competing head-to-head with games that are only available on one platform. And in the case of Miles Morales, you might even go, is that even... where are people really buying that console? They're buying that on PlayStation 5 or PlayStation 4. But Animal Crossing hangs in there at number 6. Mario Kart Deluxe is the gift that keeps giving to Nintendo, in at number 7. People are still buying Call of Duty Modern Warfare, was in at number 8, and I don't know why, given that we've probably seen the last season pass on that game. Mortal Kombat...
Big jump, too.
Yeah.
It was 8?
Right.
Wow.
Well, and again, and this may be the knock-on effect of, Cyberpunk is, a flaming dumpster fire, so I may as well, play Call of Duty Modern Warfare, which, again, I don't really understand, but it's a thing.
So, how do we explain Ring Fit Adventure jumping to number 7?
Pandemic.
More supply, probably.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know if there was like was there like a DLC or something that came out?
No,
I think so.
I think this is, part of this is like the residual sale wave of post-Christmas, things that, gifts that people couldn't find in the store, gifts that, people forgot about the one person on their list or whatever, or, some of the less advantaged, unfortunately, people who are particularly out of work, or not very high in the income bracket, take that strategy, like my parents did when I was a kid, which was, we don't buy stuff during Christmas, we wait till the after Christmas sales, right? So maybe they picked that up. The only other thing that I will mention is Mortal Kombat 11 gets a resurgence, not just in terms of it moving up the sales chart from 20 to 14, but just in general because of the next gen bump that it experienced from the release of Mortal Kombat 11 Ultimate. So any surprises in there? Any commentary on the sales numbers and the growth and the hardware sales?
Minecraft. Go ahead, Prime.
Go ahead. Oh, I was just going to say Mortal Kombat 11 might have another boost there because they just released the movie trailer today. So people might be jazzed about that. And then the only other thing was Assassin's Creed Valhalla. It was released in November. And man, number 2 in January. I think that's, and I've kind of heard like mixed things on that, but I don't know. I just thought that was kind of weird that's still holding up strong, top 5, so top 3 really.
My other one was Minecraft PlayStation 4 edition at number 17. For a console this late in its life cycle, and for a game like that, it seems like a very odd resurgence. But like you said, maybe the post-Christmas, if there was a lot of cheap PS4s that were given away, Minecraft for the younger audience is pretty much a given. I think they're going to get it on pretty much every console. So that would be my theory there. But it beat out Cyberpunk 2077. All right, so I think we'll move on Agasicles, there's besides being the number one game in December and then the number one game in January, there's some more impressive news for Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War.
Yeah, so this from an article over on Gamer Rant, published by or posted by Laura Savaglia. In only 3 months on the market, Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War has risen to the top 20 best-selling games of all time in the U.S. market. The Call of Duty series is certainly no stranger to success, but the franchise has now reached new heights. Fresh off the success of Call of Duty Warzone comes Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War. While this is the 17th game in the series, the Call of Duty franchise shows no signs of depreciation. I don't know if that's actually the right application of that term, but review scores for Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War were generally lower than previous installments in the franchise, but only by a small margin. The article goes on to talk about, this most recent. So this was a quote or a citation from the NPD sales report, but they did not publish a revised list of the top best-selling games of all time. The last version of that list that they posted covered covered the 2010 through 2019 sales reporting period. So we know that Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War is the 20th best-selling game of all time. We don't know right now what the NPD has tracked, as far as other games that are in that list. Safe bets, obviously, Grand Theft Auto 5, Minecraft, Skyrim, iterations of the NBA 2K franchise have certainly seemed to sell well. Madden probably in that list somewhere as well. This is where the article goes on to talk a little bit about the NPD's reporting methodology of reporting revenue, which I'm fine with. As the article mentions, she talks about how if they just understand it's not units sold. There's some suggestion here that there's a problem with that approach, but from a data science perspective, I think that's fine because, as she mentions, right, if I was looking at units sold, I would be counting all types of shovelware in there and games that are $2.99 and $3.99, which from a budgetary aspect and really from a, in general, in terms of a consumability and replayability aspect, generally don't provide the type of return on investment that, a $60 game does. In general, I know that there are exceptions to that rule. But I think that's the big tale of the tape is that, it's just a compounding factor on the fact that since its release, we have constantly talked about Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War, as one of the top-selling games of 2020 by December, right? So by December, it had outsold games that had been released as early as March. Now, there are skews in that data with the fact that, certain companies don't report digital sales, such as the case of Nintendo. You in general have the thumb rule, pick which side of that fence you want to land on any given day, which is that, normally I would expect that, even if you're not reporting digital sales, I'm expecting that a multi-platform title, particularly as I mentioned, that cuts over generations, is going to have a larger sell-through capability of more units than your version that's only specific to one console. So, but being a person who spent a ton of time with Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War, I get the appeal and I understand, and I can definitely understand how throughout the gaming year of 2020, with the pandemic, how there would have been kind of a rabid consumer appetite for this kind of game, releasing at the end of the year, which just drives a lot of, although highly toxic, drives a lot of online multiplayer interaction, in a time frame in history where there isn't a lot of human interaction. So I don't know. Any thoughts on this, guys?
I was just gonna say, I guess, because and another big thing maybe is because of the Black Ops series. I think it's always been a fairly popular series out of Modern Warfare and a couple of other ones that have come out that they've done. So that probably was a big help too. And just since everybody's home, people who might have fallen off on Call of Duty and came back and saw, oh hey, there's a new Black Ops, so sure, what the heck, I might as well play it. So I think that kind of plays a part in it too. But yeah,
what
I didn't.
Go ahead.
I was just I know they mentioned that the reviews were low. Did anyone ever check out the reviews? Because I never really. I'm usually going to buy a Call of Duty anyway, so I don't really care about the reviews in this case.
Yeah, I'm
Like, were they
always
like 7 or 8s, or were they like even
lo-
lower than? I'm not assuming not lower than that.
low 80s on Metacritic. So I think the last time, I mean, and I'm a review oriented buyer. Like I typically tend not to buy games that are below my threshold for review scores, just because otherwise there'd be too much to play. But the last time I remember looking at this was really kind of like around in 80, 81 percentile, maybe 84, 85 on some of the other platforms. But yeah, I feel like overall it settled out like in the low 80s.
What else is out there right now that can compete with Call of Duty as far as like a competitive shooter? Because you have, I mean, obviously you have like Apex and Fortnite and PUBG and stuff like that, but those are all like the battle royale thing. Like what other straight up like multiplayer get on a map and just fight it out type games are out there?
I don't think there's many. And you bring up a really good point, right? So it's the best selling game that the best selling game in that window. But also considering the fact that there was no Battlefield this year. Um, and like I said, the fact that it's a big multiplayer shoot, and and Warzone is in there, which is a free download, right? Which kind of generates some knock-on sales where somebody downloads Warzone and then they go, which is I think how I want to say is how I first got into Modern Warfare. Like I pulled down Warzone and then I was like, oh well, I mean, now I'm interested in actually buying the Modern Warfare full license. So. Yes, which I don't know that there's a lot out there right now. And also in a year where a lot of major, obviously Halo was delayed, and where some things that would have been in the release window just weren't there. So but left the door open for people to reach for Call of Duty.
Yeah, as far as like new stuff, yeah, there's really nothing around right now. I mean, maybe Crossfire X might give them a run for their money, but I mean, who knows on that one? It's kind of the same vein.
I feel like Halo Infinite probably would have been the one game that could eat into that multiplayer base, but it's going to be out for a while. So, speaking of Microsoft, we will move on to some additional accessory talk on E2KG Deep Dive.
Yes, so Microsoft announced their new Xbox wireless headset, and I only brought this up, and this is their own Microsoft headset. It's not like Turtle Beach or Astro or anything like that. This is just their own homegrown. And I was trying to think. I think they didn't they have an Xbox One headset when that first came out? I don't know if you ever tried that out, I guess, please.
Yeah, I did, and I'm jumping ahead a little here. This is a weird thing just for me personally, and like I bought that headset, which I don't remember if it was wireless or if it plugged in over 3.5 millimeter to the controller. But I did have it. I didn't use it a lot. I can't remember if it was proprietary to just the Xbox One, but for whatever reason, I didn't get a lot of use out of it last generation. It was actually one of the first headsets that I recently shuffled some stuff off to recycling and Goodwill and whatnot, and that was one of the first ones that I sent out the door. And so this one looks neat, nice-ish, okay, but because I didn't get a lot of use out of the last one, I'm not planning on plunking down for this one. Although I have purchased the PlayStation Gold headset, the PlayStation Platinum headset, and now like the Pulse 3D headset. So I don't know. For whatever reason, I felt like I wanted the PlayStation one, but I'm not jumping out the window to grab this one for the Xbox.
Yeah, and this one it'll work with the Series X and S and on the One, and also on PC and mobile. So it's Bluetooth, so you can just pair it any Bluetooth device that you have, or mobile PC device you have. Yeah, I just thought it was kind of interesting that they were bringing it out, because at first I was like, you know what, they've never had a headset, and then I just remember just now as I was talking about, yeah, they did have that Xbox One. I never got that one, so I didn't know how it was. So it looks kind of cool. I'll probably maybe get it. I tried to pre-order, but It's too late, of course, as of now. So it's all sold out right now. But maybe this might be a little bit easier to get than the actual system or systems as of late. So we'll see. But I just thought it was kind of neat. I mean, they give the all, it's got the noise reduction and a comfortable, it's a comfortable headset and all this other stuff. But I mean, everybody says that. So I want to get my hands on it and just kind of try it and see how this works out. But I just thought it was kind of neat that they're actually bringing out a wireless headset. So we'll see. Hopefully I'll get to report on it at some point.
Nice.
Yeah. So
go ahead.
So,
I guess, please.
yeah. So that's just so weird that they're sold out. Like I've never, other than the controllers, I've just never had a feeling that there was like a really huge uptake or attach rate of like Xbox first party accessories. But yeah, that the one for the last generation was wired. I don't know if it was also wireless, but it was wired. And because it was wired, because it was 3.5 millimeter, right, it made it compatible with the Xbox One, PC, PlayStation 4, Switch back, anything with a 3.5 millimeter port. But yeah, like I said, just didn't put a lot of time in using it.
Yeah, and so far I didn't see it on anything other than the Microsoft Store right now. So I mean, it's possible I can get it in some other like Amazon or Best Buy or something like that, Target, at some point. But as of now, at least the Microsoft Store has it sold out. So we'll see.
All right, on to segment 3 of episode 180 of E2KG Net.
I don't want to hear it, man. Not a word.
That's unfortunate because all we do is talk. Interesting choice of guest, please. Interesting choice. We're gonna do game news, so we're gonna talk about like more individual games and whatnot. We're gonna start though with what games are available on Game Pass for PC in February.
Yeah, so this,
and
I'm sorry.
you took this on. You took this on, I guess, because I guess you felt like there was a bit of a theme or kind of a.
Well, there's definitely a dynamic to this. I wanted us to unpack from an analyst standpoint. So this article over on PC Gamer posted by Molly Taylor, and I quote. Here are the games coming to Game Pass for PC in February. Microsoft has announced which games are dropping on Xbox Game Pass in the latter half of February, and PC gamers are in for some decent games this month. So we're getting Wreckfest, Code Vein. Let's see what else. Mind Control, Delete. Still no sign yet of EA Play coming to PC. I know that it was delayed into 2021, but the big story here for me was Dirt 5. And so what I wanted us to kind of talk about or kind of hear your guys' thoughts on. So Dirt 5 is a recently released game, a next-gen launch title. It doesn't have super wide appeal, fairly well known to racing fans like myself. But this is also in the wake of Control coming to Game Pass, now also on PlayStation Plus. This is, Control being a game that I bought in 2019 or whatever when it was released, and we've had the whole controversy with 505 games, and, you can't get the ultimate version, which has the next gen, I think, graphics, upgrade attached to it. You get no credit or no discount for having bought the previous version of Control. Now on top of that, like people who have paid for that game, and as well as people who have I paid for Dirt 5 as a launch title, now I'm like, not me personally, because I don't care as much, but I'm certain some people do, that like now people who are paying their $15 a month or whatever for Game Pass are getting the game mostly for free. So this is part of the conundrum, right, with Game Pass and how it plays out in the market, and I kind of wanted to hear your guys' thoughts on, I mean, there's definitely two camps, right? And we have them right here. We have Swiss, who staunchly feels, if I may speak for you, you can correct me after this, but staunchly feels that, you want to buy games, you don't want to rent games or lease games or, go the subscription route. But then you have the perspective from Prime, who's like, well, on Xbox, I already pay for Game Pass, so I'm not going to pay for games on top of that, right? And I'm going to play the games that come to my subscription. So in this world where those things are in direct conflict, right? When a new game day and date releases and is available on Game Pass, like, does that then make you wary for purchasing games at full price that other people are going to get for free thereafter? So I will toss that question out and send it up for grabs for whoever wants to go at it first.
I'll jump in. That was an accurate statement. I don't like having subscriptions, mostly because as I'm paying, like, you stop if you don't want to continue the subscription anymore, you lose access to a lot of this stuff. So I don't like that. And so for me, this probably wouldn't come up as much because I just kind of ignore the whole subscription service ecosystem. And for me, like, a bigger concern would be buying it and then like at release, and then like a month later they slash the price. Like what would happen with I think that happened to me with Wolfenstein New Colossus or something. Like, I bought it in October when it was released, and for Black Friday they slashed the price 50%. So that would be the analogy for me. But as you were talking, I thought about this in terms of like what the movie studios are going through with like Netflix. Now that with the pandemic, I think it's hastening the demise of like brick and mortar theaters. But there was like that, well, how long do we let things be exclusive for this area before we release it to the subscription model?
I mean, maybe not so much for Dirt 5, but maybe more Control. I mean, this is kind of right up my alley because, like, I said a couple shows ago, or GX shows ago, I'm full in on Game Pass this year. I mean, I'm pretty much not going to be buying anything, at least on Xbox side, because I have Game Pass. So, I mean, if they want to throw a game that just came out, a couple months ago, I mean, hey, more for me to play. So I have no problems with that. But I kind of saw this too, especially with Dirt 5, and even when I saw it, I was like, oh wow, that's that just came out. Even though I'm not big into the simulation racing games, and I guess this is a little more looser on the simulation than most games, from what I've read. But I was seeing this as more of, hey, we got a new system out there, the Xbox Series X and S. Excuse me. We got to throw something out there that's that's new or newer. So I think they kind of threw Dirt 5 out there because they really don't have much else. I mean, other than the Medium that just came out. So and some of the other third-party stuff, but obviously that's locked, behind those either those subscription services that they have themselves, or it's, they just don't want to have it thrown out there yet. So and obviously this is third-party too, but I think there was just something they probably just made a deal with and said, hey, let's just throw it out there and get it out there. So, but like I said, I don't mind right now. So I'm good.
Yeah. I'm sorry, go ahead, Swiss.
I was going to say, if Halo Infinite releases when they thought it was going to release, like, that was supposed to be released on Game Pass as well, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, pretty much. I mean, pretty much what they've gone on record as saying is anything first party will release day and date, on Game Pass. Yeah, so it's just going to be an interesting thing to follow, right? Because this is to me is the conundrum, right? Again, the Scylla and Charybdis of Game Pass, which is, I see a lot of people on Twitter say, Game Pass doesn't interest me. Like, and I get it, right? There are. I mean, first of all, it's just a marketing barrage, and I feel like they can kind of stop, like the frequency of tweets and whatever from the Xbox, various Xbox accounts, ID at Xbox and Game Pass and Xbox, like it's just constant, like, oh, these new games are coming, like to the point where I'm starting to get numb, and I'm like, dude, I get it, like there's like a new thing coming to Game Pass like every week, like you have a recently arrived like section in the app, like I don't need you to constantly like be yammering at me about like every indie title that's coming to stinking Game Pass, right? And I definitely have these months where, again, like we just talked about the Nintendo Direct, and we have years of experience now with games with gold and PS Plus, when like that monthly announcement comes out of like the new things that are coming out, and you're like, whatever. Like, like there's nothing here that appeals to me. And so I see a lot of people say, I don't want to hear about Game Pass stuff. What I expect from Game Pass is for them to constantly have new games, and I'm like, come on, guys, that's just not practical, right? It's just not pragmatic, and it's not universally appealing, right? If all they have is AAA titles that are new-ish coming, then it doesn't appeal to the indie people, right? And a lot of people, that's all they play, or that's what they're focused on. So it's fighting that battle and going back and forth that Xbox has to play. But I'm one of those people who, like, when the indie stuff comes there, I don't pay as much attention. When a big AAA game comes, I pay a lot of attention. To be quite honest, what I want mostly on Game Pass is like the games that I typically am interested in playing, but I don't have time. And are kind of, I mentioned, I am, right, wrong, or indifferent, hate me or love me or whatever. I am a review-based kind of purchaser because that's what I have time for. And so that swath of games that falls in like the 70 to 79, score range, are the games that I typically don't make time to play. But if they pop up on a subscription service or games with gold or PS Plus, I do. That's when I go, play those games. So that's what I'm most interested in seeing, the things that fall kind of outside my purchase radar. So I don't know. It's just an interesting dynamic to watch unfold.
Yeah, and just with Microsoft's strategy with the cloud and everything, and moving forward, like this whole, I know they're really pushing subscriptions, so we'll see what kind of trend we have. Moving on. I think, Gascles, you have the next story as well. MLB the Show 21.
Yeah, so I kind of wish DB was on to unpack this with me, because he's another big MLB the Show fan. But this, not that I dislike your guys' company by any means. This posted on the PlayStation blog and posted by, I don't know, Ramon Russell. MLB the Show 21 presents Stunt on Your Rivals with coach and Fernando Tatis Jr. MLB the Show 21 launches on April 20th, 2021. You probably spent many restless nights awake wondering, I wonder what Coach is doing right now. Well, we've got news for you. Not only is Coach back, but he has a new best friend, Fernando Tatis Jr. Every Tuesday and Thursday for the remainder of February, we will be releasing a new Coach and Fernando Tatis Jr. video that showcases a different area of the game. The article goes on to, now look, I don't know who this, like, the coach thing is. I'm sure he's some kind of mascot or whatever. I don't follow baseball closely, so I don't really know as well who Fernando Tatis is, but I do love playing the video game. But the key thing here for me, from a market standpoint, is this to me is kind of the first major iteration that I've seen where, particularly with the rollout on both PlayStation and Xbox this year, there's a big marketing campaign and a frequent, battle rhythm of updates and things that are being pushed out to the consumer along the lines of kind of what we normally see from Madden. And so being a person who doesn't necessarily realize that I've bought several years in a row of the MLB The Show franchise until I'm like looking at my game like inventory on the console and I go, oh, yeah, I've bought like the last 5 or 6 years worth. I like that, and I appreciate these articles in this marketing press that are going to kind of highlight the feature differences and the new things that are being introduced, because I don't always necessarily catch on to those or am entirely conscious of those. I think, where I fell down and had some problems with some of the design approaches with MLB The Show 20 are being addressed in this. Changes in fielding. There's a part in here that talked about, namely, changes in Z-axis catches, but also jumping, reaching wall catches, fly ball catches, right? So things where your player has to leave the ground, I just felt were really problematic. Last year when I was live streaming, I definitely caught some clips of like where you could see the ball just like do something that in real world physics like shouldn't be feasible. Player, things that players should have caught, clipping outside the wall and making a catch, and like, so just a lot of weird kind of glitchy things that should have been addressed that were still kind of problematic late into the game's life cycle. So I'm glad to see these. There's going to be a technical test on February 23rd. That's going to go for about a week. So I don't know. It'll be very interesting to see if that technical test is available on both PlayStation and Xbox. I would be very curious to see that. I would, from a software perspective, I would hope and would highly encourage them to have a technical test on Xbox, like the first year that they're deploying to that platform. It seems like it would be prudent. But I wonder. Yeah, go ahead.
On their site, PlayStation users will receive a notification when it's available to download. Xbox users will gain access and download to the Xbox Insider Hub.
Okay,
so it is both.
Good. That's excellent. Like I said, from a software perspective, I would definitely want to work out my kinks on the new platform, in a safe place rather than post release. So no, yeah, I'm really interested and excited about this. I don't always get amped for MLB the Show until right when we're on top of the release window. But this makes me very curious. It also makes me curious that I may entertain thoughts of not playing this on PlayStation but playing it on Xbox. Considering the love I'm gaining for my little engine that my mini IT Xbox, essentially that is the Xbox Series S. So. It'll be interesting to see how this falls out. I know you guys have some interest in baseball in the real world, I think, at least some tangential interest. So any of this do you find appealing?
Well, I mean, considering it's like a frozen wasteland outside my window right now, just looking at it and seeing the ball field, and it's just like, I think I'm ready for some baseball. And like, as you're talking, I'm like, you know what? Maybe I'll pick it up this year. So, yeah.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. I would be interested in some E2KG MLB the Show multiplayer. A little mini league maybe. So be interesting.
I'd have to pick it up on PS4 though. So I don't know if they've announced crossplay or anything yet. It's just not have been on my radar.
Yeah, I have to believe it's crossplay. I think this is the one that there was an article posted a few weeks ago too that also made me very interested. I think this is going to be the first chance we get to see. There was a little small print thing that kind of made it sound like they were going to require basically anyone who played multiplayer to subscribe to PlayStation Plus. And I found it interesting the way they've voiced it, because they didn't say that to play multiplayer you have to subscribe to PlayStation Plus. You have to subscribe to PlayStation Plus on PlayStation or Xbox Live on Xbox. It almost made it sound like if I buy it on Xbox and I want to play online, I've got to subscribe to PlayStation Plus, and it makes me wonder if the online environment is gonna be cross-platform, and it's gonna include PlayStation players. And in order to get into that environment, they're going to force Xbox players to, right? That would be like one of the greatest coups for us to discuss, like at all times. Like, finding a market means to basically force the other platform to pay, right, to play online, with your game that has historically been an exclusive on your platform.
All right. Next story, we'll go from baseball to some more Cyberpunk 2077 news. So, kind of related to Cyberpunk, CD Projekt Red announced that they had been hacked. Forget exactly which day it had been originally, I think February 10th. But they announced that there was an intrusion, and the hackers had encrypted their version control server or whatever, their file servers, and demanded a ransom. The hackers did realize that they weren't able to get to the backup, so in their little ransom note they said, "We know you're probably going to be able to restore the backups," and in fact, that's what CD Projekt Red did. So as far as losing they just had to do the restore. Like they recovered all their data. So instead, the hackers decided, we're going to release your source code if you don't pay the ransom. And that's how they went to try to score some Bitcoin off of this. And apparently by the 11th, I think, there had been some source code starting to be released. So it's I mean, I'm in the IT industry. This is something that you kind of worry about, and something you have to be prepared for. Oddly enough, the biggest thing that I took away from it was the fact that they had their backup system set up in an intelligent enough way where the hackers weren't able to like really bring them to their knees like they could have. So I don't know if there's much other to talk about. Do you think that having the source code floating out there could be a potential problem down the road? I'm not really sure if that's going to be an issue either. Because I don't really think that, I don't know. I don't think that somebody's going to like take that source code and like use it to start making games or something, springing off of it. Like it's mostly for me, like pirating, and that's going to be a problem regardless. So
Yeah, there's no multiplayer. Well, right now there's no multiplayer element to the game. Supposedly they were working on something for this year or even next year, I think it was. So I mean, yeah, all they can do is like just pirate it, and I would say mod, but I think they already released modding tools anyways. So I mean, I don't know. I'm in IT too, but I'm not in like software side, so I don't know what they could actually do with that data other than, you know, I don't know. To be honest with you.
Well, the modding tools, I mean, I think somebody may choose to play with the modding side of it. The modding tools always have like constraints and don't let you get to the the lowest levels of the code, and so releasing the source may enable somebody to produce a mod that you wouldn't be able to produce with just the mod tools. And I haven't tracked it close enough to know for certain whether or not they've released modification tools for the PC. So that might be interesting. I think the bigger concern to me a little bit was like, there's really nothing to do with the source code until you improve the gameplay of the game on certain platforms, and I don't know whether or not somebody. I think the most valuable thing to the world, to the community, to Cyberpunk players greater would be if I think the last time I've seen this was on something like Falcon. So I've talked about it a few times before. Falcon 4.0 released on the PC in like 1999. Was a beautiful and wonderful and really incredibly ambitious game that was buggy as all heck and would frequently crash on you after you'd spent like 2.5 hours in the cockpit and then came back and tried to land at the base. You'd land, the game would crash, you'd lose all of your progress for the last 2.5 hours, you would have to reload the mission and start all over. But, in the way that game was really made universally kind of consumable by all but like the elite nerdists was that, an open source group, eventually got a hold of the source code and created this publicly available modification for it. And so really to play Falcon 4.0, you buy the game and then you go get this like mod, right? That radically increases its stability. That might be the best thing that could happen, but I think, given that, people who do that's not their full-time job, my guess is like the source code's released, let's say somebody picked it up, you're probably not going to see something like that for like 2 years, by which point CD Projekt Red probably could care less.
Yeah, it's I think a lot of the reason why this story went a little bit viral is because of Cyberpunk 2077's company, and they got hacked. And there's something poetic about that if you're a gaming journalist, I suppose. Next story. Tao, you had like your legal story, I think.
Yeah. So
Nemesis.
So no courtroom stuff this time, but just more of a patent that has been approved for the Nemesis system from WB Games. Has gone through. and actually will be in effect on the February 23rd of this year. And I guess they've been trying to get this patent now since like 2015. So they're just repeatedly over the years they had to revise it and resubmit applications for this patent. Basically, so the language is doesn't get too legally jargony or anything like that, but so it's the short version is the patent covers a system featuring procedurally generated NPCs that exist in a hierarchy and interact with and will remember the actions of players and have their appearance or behaviors altered by players. So, and I never played the game. I think I played like the demo of maybe the very first one of Shadow of Mordor. But basically what happens, and correct me if any of you ever played it, but so when you're playing through the game and say you like beat up on somebody and that person won't remember you and kind of follow you, if that's how it worked, I believe, like generally within the game.
Yeah, and I'm not perfectly clear on the if you beat them. My experience is much more on the if you yeah. So it was if you I think the way it works is if you beat them. So there was a whole like promotion grid, for the orcs and how they moved up and down like the battle tiers. And so I want to say if you beat them, they might drop in the battle tier. But I definitely remember if they beat you, right, they would gain, basically a reputation buff and might move up. And for their promotion system, right, they might go from just a tribal orc to like a war clan leader or whatever. And then when you encountered them again, right, there would be, there would be some chit chat about, them, I'm gonna kill you again, or or whatever. But it was basically a persistent system where it kind of remembered past engagements with an orc and then played on that in the gameplay. Which it's interesting to me that they were able to score a patent for this because you have rivalries, right? In other games, you have rivalries in racing games, like you trade paint with somebody in a game in Grid, or I want to say Forza, or other people will establish like these I don't want to say hatreds, but right, these relationships of contestation, right, between you. Depending on past experiences, so it's
rivals.
Yeah,
Just a rival.
I can see why it took them, numerous attempts to get this through.
Yeah, and I'm thinking on that side, like maybe they were just too general, like when they first started to get the patent out there, and they kind of like dug down into it a little bit more, because even in here they say that some of the rejections were because there are too many similarities to other applications and other patents of the same, like from other games like Square Enix and some mobile games. And even Webkins, which is okay. So they must have been really broad, like really general on their description. But one of the reasons I brought this up, and this original article I got this from was from IGN, was, and not so much in this article, but some other articles I've read online where the people were like, kind of like, this is kind of like the doom and gloom, like this is kind of the end of gaming almost, that if they can get a patent like this, it's gone through, that at some point in the future more and more studios might say, okay, so they can get Nemesis systems. So, and obviously when you get a patent like this, if you want to use anything like this, you got to get the license from WB now, so you got to pay for it. So now everybody's going to start doing this, and it's kind of going to be the it's kind of kill, I guess, maybe not so much the big guys, but maybe the smaller developers out there, because they can't use that kind of system now because they have to pay for it, obviously. So I don't know if you guys think it's that kind of apocalyptic scenario or not, but I just wanted to get your opinions on that.
I mean, yeah, go ahead, Swiss.
I kind of like am always a little bit skeptical about some of these game companies patenting like their design for like a game mechanic like that, just because, like you said, it feels like you're kind of staking a claim to something in the creative sphere, and I just think more in terms of engineering, I guess, which maybe that was the original problem. They weren't really talking about it in a detailed enough engineering level to make it tangible as a patent. But like, I'm not an attorney, and I don't really trust myself when it comes to stuff like this.
Yeah, I feel like there's got to be precedent for this in like the movie industry. Like we definitely have like the whole reason, um, special effects shops and things and digital production shops have grown up as subsidiaries of major production studios, or around the fact that they were patenting or making unique a particular implementation, right? You think of things like Industrial Light and Magic, definitely has patented approaches to movie effects. I don't think that that's necessarily ever stalled or taken the life out of innovation in the movie industry. You know, I mean, some of it depends on how the patent office applied it. What the periodicity is of them having uniqueness for that patent, how easily people are able to maneuver around it, whether or not any of these kind of patent troll lawyer shops get a hold of it and use it as a club against other people in the gaming industry. Today I'm not worried about it, right? Like, I'm sure WB has a patent on bullet time from the Matrix. That hasn't necessarily removed every John Woo looking like effect from movie creation since the Matrix came out. So I think we'll be okay. We'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, I think people were more they're more afraid just because they're thinking more this is more of an idea that they're patenting than something like, say, like a graphics engine or something like Unreal or something like that. So I think that's what kind of people were trying to get at some of the articles that I was reading.
Don't you dare suggest that Twitter and the rest of the internet ever be sensationalist or clickbaity about their reactionary response to the 30 seconds they spent reading an article headline.
No, never. All right. So the next clickbaity headline that we're selecting. Amazon's MMO New World delayed until August 2021. So if you recall, Amazon is also kind of like Stadia, entering this cloud gaming space. But before they announced Luna, they had already announced like their own game studio. And there was two games that came out. The one that I remember is Crucible, which launched and kind of stumbled out of the gate, and they kind of pulled it back and closed up shop, I think.
Stumbled is a very generous term.
Yeah. They face planted. They belly flopped into an empty pool. So this is I think though, this was probably the bigger game that they were really working on, because I mean, it was an MMO. So like, we're going to go out there and we're going to have a service oriented game, which, they want like the long tail type players. So it's been delayed, and I kind of threw it in there just because I'm curious how much these like the Amazons and the Googles are serious about actually being content creators in that regard. With Stadia, our next story is going to kind of hint on this, but they didn't want to stick around with their internal studios. But Amazon at least has like Amazon Prime TV shows and whatnot that they at least produce in and of themselves. So it isn't a foreign concept for them to be like in this entertainment development space. Like, I can kind of see that, okay, we can have our own logical outgrowth of a game studio. But I've kind of just felt like it's been interesting that as big as Amazon and Google have been, we haven't seen anything yet from them that you would call a successful release. And it's already starting to, and like the fact that this got delayed, even though it's just from spring to August, like we've seen this before where they do that delay, and then as we get close to August, it might get pushed back again. It just struck me as a red flag. Is this game on any of you guys' radar at all?
No, I think I did sign up for the beta, but I mean, other than that, it was more of just an interest. I was just interested. Excuse me, to see what this is about. And I'm not a big MMO guy, but since this is Amazon, I just want to say, okay, they're trying something super big. It's not like just Guilt that came out on Stadia. Something small. I mean, this is a pretty big game. So I was like, I'll see what happens. But if it does come out, it's no big deal to me, unfortunately. But I don't know. I guess because if you're interested or not.
No, because like you, I don't really play MMOs. I spent some time with EVE Online. That was about the extent of it. I do like persistent progression games. I mean, I guess you could call Destiny 2 an MMO. I know Bungie made that flip, but still, that's not how I got my foot in the door in that franchise or that game. So, also not a big MMO person. To me, like, every MMO gets delayed, right? Like, I don't know any MMO that releases on its first announced release date. So this isn't cause for panic for me just yet. Amazon, TV studios. I mean, that's an Emmy Award winning, Golden Globe winning, right, production studio now. So they have definitely come in and changed the face of television as we have historically known it. Along with the transformative effect of streaming in general. So yeah, it's interesting that they'll that they're continuing to stick with this and push this along.
As opposed to Stadia, which is our next and final story.
Yeah, so Stadia obviously, reported, I think even on our last deep dive show, we knew that Stadia was shutting down its first party development studio, which was headed, I think, at least creatively by Jade Raymond, one of the principal leads of the Assassin's Creed franchise. I think we may have commented on how it was interesting her whole path from leaving Ubisoft to go to EA to head up EA Motive, which was a studio that was, the way that it was reported, seems like it was a studio that was kind of open specifically for her, and then moved from there over to Google, and now shut down. I think what the things that are falling out now is that was a surprise to the developers, and that just the week before that they had been praised at how the hard work that they had done and the things that they were producing and their performance as a team, and then they were turned around and shut down, which is a little disappointing in just kind of how corporate leadership kind of handled that. If Phil Harrison is the equivalent of a C-level officer or an executive VP or whatever, I definitely understand how he handled it. And having been at corporations where there were layoffs, I know that frontline managers get a lot of are often handcuffed, and prevented from saying things and communicating them to employees. But it's just a little bit amazing that there was no conveyance of any kind of warning that a thing like this was coming down the pike. Jade Raymond has since left the studio, and that seems like it wasn't necessarily a managed evolution or exit either. So it's just interesting. I think, of course, the question and problem is this indicative of Google about to get out of Stadia, and was Stadia bad play? And as you mentioned, Swiss, what's the real creative force behind gaming? And where I am is I don't know. We talked last time about how this is a pivot to just becoming a platform, and that may be the case. Who knows? I mean, Google. I guess my big takeaway from this is that I think a lot of the gaming world, and I hate to sound lectury once again, but I often talk about how the gaming community and people who participate in the dialogue are often just kind of uninformed of how larger ecosystems and the larger playing field kind of view things, and voice a lot of outrage about things that really aren't that different. So if you look at Google, right, that Stadia Dev Studio is not the only thing that got shut down last year, right? Google Music has shut down. YouTube has made major changes in how it's monetized, how it allows monetization on its platform. Google Hangouts got shut down, right? So these are significantly bigger services, right? In terms of, right, people uploaded 40 gigabytes or more of their music, right? And then we're told, hey, all your service stuff is going over to YouTube Music, and if you don't like that, don't re-up, and by the way, get your music out of the cloud. That's a much bigger deal than shutting down this dev studio who had yet to really produce any releasable content that anybody was really subscribed to or dependent upon. So, I mean, in the grander scheme of Google, I don't think that shutting down this dev studio was really that big of a deal, right? If that dev studio was 50 people, and the average employee made, let's even say, 150K, you're talking about 7.5 mil, which is like a drop in the bucket to Google. So I don't necessarily know that the dev studio was, I don't like how they were treated. I think that could have been handled better. That dynamic is weird. But in the grand scheme of just the financial playing field, I don't know that shutting down the Google Stadia Dev Studio is really that big a deal. In the face of a studio that, like I said, shut down Hangouts, shut down Google Music, made major changes to YouTube. And that's just to list like the top things that kind of floated across my radar in terms of what was shut down in 2020 and the corner turn to 2021.
Todd, do you have any thoughts? You have Stadia, right?
I do. Yeah, I haven't really used it all that much, though. I haven't had a chance to jump back into it now that I have unlimited data, because that was one of the reasons I stopped, because it was using a good chunk of it. Yeah, I mean, I think maybe everyone's making a big deal of it just because this was, as far as I know, their only studio, if I'm correct. And it's they made this big push for it. Yeah, obviously, like you said, they had Jade Raymond and they had all these other people that they're trying to start this up, and it only been 2 years. I mean, I guess it makes sense financially. Like, hey, this is maybe it might be a drop in the bucket, but it's obviously it's still a lot of money, depending on however they do their finances. So I mean, I don't know. I think they'll still be fine. There's still going to be a Stadia going for a little bit longer, at least till the end of the year. And I think we talked about this, I don't know, it was last week or the week before, like maybe they're trying to work it into something else than just, hey, this is a game a game producing service. This is going to be a service that you can use somewhere at some point. So that's pretty much my thoughts.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. I think that it's kind of bad. It's bad for the employees. But in the Google scope of things, it isn't complete shock. And they've had it for 2 years. Maybe this team wasn't performing either, and they just saw the writing on the wall, and it wasn't clicking. Yeah, like Tao said, we'll wait and see how the actual Stadia platform proceeds. But I think that'll do it for tonight's episode. Next week, of course, would be the GX show, and I believe that will be hosted by DB, and he'll be joined by Agastcles and Towmaster99. So the picks plays that you guys will be reporting out on is related to Final Fantasy XIV, since that's receiving a major expansion this fall. Choose another game with a major expansion, or any kind of expansion, really. And we're not even going to limit what the definition of expansion is, and see what you like, how you like expansions to be, and maybe we'll talk a little bit about how games have evolved over time and what it means to be like a finished product, and how expansions can actually help or hurt franchises. So, Gascles, as of now, you have Stadia listed as your platform of choice with Hitman 3, and Gascles, Townmaster, you're going back to Skyrim.
Yeah, I don't buy a lot of like expansions or DLC, so I kind of had to think about that one for a while. So I mean, that's the only thing I've ever really bought an expansion for. And on the Switch, it's already on there, so kind of makes it a little bit easier. And I never finished the last one they released. So
Yeah, I agree with. I'm kind of there with you. I rarely buy the DLC unless I happen to get something on sale where it's all bundled together. And DB will be for now. These are all subject to change. DB's looking at Mass Effect 2, the expansions on Xbox One. So please join us. Until next time, enjoy your gaming, have fun, stay safe. Good night.